What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Wake and Jake College Football Show. Today is the final conference preview. I am doing the Big Ten, saving the best for last. Next week, season preview as a whole, over under on win totals, Heisman prediction, playoff predictions. I will be getting into Notre Dame, Oregon State, and Washington State, giving them previews as well. And then after that, we've got real football that we're talking about, games that actually matter, and that is how it's going to be pretty much for the rest of the season. Previewing games for the week, recapping games for the week. Um, we will be going to actually next week, well, not next week, the week after, 2 episodes a week. So you can expect one previewing the week and then one recapping the weekend, and it will be that way all the way through the national championship. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it, and let's have a good wake and bake sesh. All right, I do want to start with, and I know this happened, a couple weeks ago now, but I do want to touch on Big Ten Media Days. Just two things that I really wanted to touch on, because again, similar to the SEC, it was with the SEC, they were taking shots at the Big Ten and talking about conference scheduling and playoffs and all that stuff. Big Ten honestly was pretty much the same. Taking shots at the SEC, talking about conference scheduling or how many games you should be playing, playoffs, all that stuff. But specifically, I want to talk about Kurt Cignetti. Spoiler alert, I am not doing Dude Are You High this week. If I was to do it, Kurt Cignetti was going to be the winner because he came out and said that Indiana is adopting an SEC scheduling philosophy, and that is why they dropped Virginia as a non-conference game. And says he's more focused on a 9-conference game schedule, focused on those 9-conference games, and that's why they dropped that Power 4 opponent in Virginia. And normally I wouldn't hate that if they did that, drop Power 4, took a shot at the SEC in the process. It's fun, it's whatever. I wouldn't hate it as much, except for the fact that it's Virginia. You didn't drop a powerhouse. You didn't drop a team who you are going to possibly lose to. Indiana's better than Virginia. Indiana, 9 times out of 10, would win that game. If you were dropping a much better opponent and then saying all the things you said, I get it 100%, and I would be behind it, and I would not hate that he said that. But it's Virginia. You didn't drop some playoff contender, conference winner, potential conference winner. You dropped the bottom of the barrel, Virginia, a team that, let's be honest, the best FCS teams could probably beat, potentially. He also mentioned, and he's not the only person to say this, he talked about having an SEC Big Ten matchup every year. Just kind of, and I've heard people say, the top 2 teams in each conference would play each other the next year, or from the year previous would then play each other. Second best teams in each conference would play each other the next year, and so on down the line. Now, obviously, the Big Ten has 18 teams. The SEC only has 16, so there would be 2 teams left out every year. Fine, whatever. I don't really care about that. It would be pretty interesting. I'm going to be honest. I don't hate the idea of the SEC and the Big Ten playing every year. Now, that being said, to have the SEC only play 8 conference games and then play a Big Ten opponent that's only 9 Power 4 games, then that there's that whole issue that they would have to work out. But I don't hate the thought of in the future having an SEC Big Ten challenge. The other person I wanted to talk about, Nico Iamaleava. I feel like everybody's got their opinions about him. Everybody's heard the story. We're a few months past it, and when he goes to Big Ten Media Days, you fully expect that he's going to be asked about why he left Tennessee, all of that stuff. And here's the thing that I'm calling BS on. He claims that he did not leave because of money. He claimed that he left to be closer to his family and to finish out his college career close to his family. I was under the impression, and I'm probably wrong. I was under the impression that his family, or most of his family, or at least part of his family, had moved to Knoxville to be closer. Maybe it was just his dad that moved. I'm not really sure. Maybe nobody actually moved. So it's possible that played a small part. but he 100% left because of money. There was rumors that he didn't like the roster around him either at Tennessee. Wanted better weapons, thought the offensive line wasn't going to be good enough. A whole myriad of things. So for him to say it was just family, I can't blame him for saying that, because what are you going to say? I hated my teammates there, or I didn't think the roster was good enough, or I wanted more money? No, none of that is going to look good. But we all know that family was probably not the number one reason that he left. Like I said earlier, the Big Ten media days, it was a lot of the same, same as the SEC, just a lot of firing shots at each other, hyping up your program, whatever. But those are the two things that I wanted to touch on, just because I have my thoughts on Nico Iamaleava and Kurt Signetti just pissing off every SEC and fan just in team by saying what he said. It's had to talk about that as well. Um, Moving on to coaches on the hot seat. You got a couple here that, and much like in the other conferences, some of these guys you could argue are hotter seats than others. Shouldn't be, because I got some guys here that are on the warm seat that some might argue should be on the hot seat, and vice versa. And I think it's even more apparent in the Big Ten, where you could argue a case on either side for three of the four coaches that I'm going to talk about. First one being Luke Fickell. His buyout is $40 million. That's kind of high. Could Wisconsin, buy him out? Sure. Uh, but I feel like it is a little high, and that alone might buy him another year if they don't have a good season. But if the season is bad enough, they may cough up that money and pay that buyout. 40 million. It's right on that edge where if you're Ohio State, Alabama, all these big schools, you're doing that in a heartbeat. You're cutting your losses and moving on to a new coach. $40 million buyout. Who cares? Wisconsin, on the other hand, that's right where it's borderline. Like, could they do it? Sure. Should they do it? Maybe not. Maybe wait another year. Tough to say. But I have Luke Fickell on the hot seat. Next one here, I don't think there's a question about him being on the hot seat. In And honestly, I'm shocked he has not been fired yet, because it's just been a very underwhelming tenure at this school. I've got Mike Locksley on the hot seat. Now his buyout is only 12 million. That's nothing. Let's be honest. That's not bad. So if Maryland has another shitty year, I mean, let's be honest, he's probably gone. Um, Now again, I'm shocked that he's still there, if I'm going to be honest with you, because again, it's just been a very underwhelming tenure. But his buyout's not high. He might be gone this year. Now these next two coaches I have on the warm seat, and some may argue that they should be on the hot seat, and that's fine. I will listen to that argument. I do have my reason, a pretty solid reason for one of these coaches here. That's Lincoln Riley. His buyout is so insanely high. If you thought Jimbo Fisher's buyout was high when Texas A&M bought him out, this one's insane. I think it's 88 million. That's a lot of money to pay a coach to not coach. Um, he probably sticks around another year or two because of that alone. It has been a disappointing tenure at USC. I have my thoughts on Lincoln Riley, because he was in the Big 12 at Oklahoma, had great offenses, never had good defenses. Finds out that Oklahoma is going to be going to the SEC, bolts, heads over to USC, who was in the Pac-12 at that time. Same deal there. Great offenses, not great defenses. Same story, different place. And then all of a sudden, USC announces we're joining the Big Ten. And I don't think Lincoln Riley was thrilled, because he left Oklahoma because he didn't want to go to the SEC. So he heads to USC, where they're in the Pac-12, and it's not as tough of a conference as the Big Ten and the SEC. And then they go to the Big Ten, and I don't think he was thrilled. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he left for like an NFL job, or to be like a offensive coordinator, not at college, in the NFL. I could even see him leaving to be the head coach at another school. Honestly, one that is in the Big 12 or the ACC just because he doesn't want to play in these tough conferences. That buyout is so high, though. They're not going to probably fire him this year because of that. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Lincoln Riley just kind of left on his own. But that, I mean, coach good enough just to get bought out and then be set for life, even though you probably already are, that could be a motivation as well. Last one I have on here is Sharon Moore, and I don't think he should be necessarily on the hot seat unless Michigan does have a really bad year. Um, if they do, he will for sure be next season on the hot seat. I think he sticks around. I don't think he's on the hot seat this year. Now, you could make your argument that he should be, and that's fine. I'll listen to it. I won't disagree because he also doesn't have a super big buyout. So they can buy him out at no problem and move on to a new head coach. And I expect they will within the next 2 years. I just don't think it's going to be after this season unless they have just a terrible season. Um, so yeah, those are the four coaches that I would keep an eye on this year. One of those for sure I think is gone, and that is Mike Loxley. All right, moving into team previews, starting at who I have finishing first, working our way to the bottom. I think you all know who I have finishing last because I think everybody has them there. At number one, finishing first, not necessarily winning the Big Ten championship, but finishing first, Ohio State. And I think most people have some sort of combination of Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Whether you have, I think most people probably are leaning more Ohio State, Penn State, but those are generally, I think, everybody's top three. Uh, Wide receivers are going to be great per usual. They're always great. You don't even ever have to look at who the wide receivers are going to be to just know that they're going to be great. Brand new starting quarterback though, redshirt freshman Julian Sayin. And anytime you have a true freshman quarterback or redshirt freshman quarterback or just a first time starting quarterback, you do want a good running attack behind them. It helps get them in the groove, get used to playing Division I football, and move forward with the season. If Ohio State still had Judkins and Henderson, I mean, Julian Sayin is in the perfect spot, but they don't. They lose their top rushers from last year, and honestly, I really think they're going to be fine. Um, I really do. They bring back Peoples going into his second year, I believe. They bring in transfer C.J. Donaldson. I do think Ohio State's running backs will be good, will be fine, but I do think they have to be really good to get Julian Sayin into a rhythm, into a groove when it comes to the season because they start off the season right away with Texas. Um, Again, in the long run, I think they'll be great. I think they'll be fine. It's just an unproven. Well, C.J. Donaldson's proven at West Virginia, but not in the Big Ten. Unproven running backs, new starting quarterback. That combination, I guess, would be my question mark. But I have Ohio State finishing first. I really don't think it's going to be an issue the whole season at all, if at all. Um, Defensively, I guess if you wanted to pinpoint where your biggest concern would be as a fan or as someone who's looking at that team, it's probably the defensive line, I guess. But much like Ohio State receivers, they always have a good defensive line. And so I'm really not worried that they lost so many guys to the draft. Because again, Ohio State always has good defensive lines. Linebacker should be solid. Sonny Styles is back. Secondary is going to be good. They got Caleb Downs, who honestly might be the defensive player of the year. Let's be honest. And then you got Igbenogson at cornerback. I think the defense is going to be really good this year. My biggest concern for them, actually, not even the defensive line, it's losing Jim Knowles. He heads over to Penn State. You have Matt Patricia as your defensive coordinator. I mean, maybe he's going to be an elite defensive coordinator. I do think Ohio State's defense will be good. They've got enough talent, and again, the defensive line, even if they're unproven, they're always good. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. They should be competing for a Big Ten championship, if not finishing top three. They should be making the playoffs, and they should be in the running for the national title. I wouldn't say that their schedule is necessarily easy, but they don't have to play themselves, and that's always a plus. They're a talented team. They're probably going to finish first. And if they don't finish first, it's probably this next team who I have finishing second, Penn State. And I'll just say it now, I have Penn State beating Ohio State for the Big Ten championship game. Offensively, they return quite a bit of production. Drew Aller, both of your top running backs, they're probably going to have, well, we'll get into another running back duo later. Um, but they'll probably have one of the top, if not the top running back duo in the country. Drew Aller is a top 5 quarterback. You bring back most of your offensive line from last year. The one thing you really don't bring back is your pass catchers, and that will remain a question for them to start the season. Wide receivers didn't scare anybody last year. Let's be honest. Wide receivers were not great. They didn't scare anybody. The only receiving threat that they had was Warren, who is now gone to the NFL. How are the wide receivers this year? Can they be better than last year? Looking at the guys they brought in, there's no reason why they can't be better than last year, especially since last year's wide receivers didn't scare you. But that would be my one question mark for this offense moving into this season, is that who are your pass catchers going to be and how good are they going to be? Defensively, you lost Tom Allen as your defense coordinator, but you brought in Jim Knowles, who is just as good, if not better. You honestly couldn't ask for a better transition from when you lose a coordinator. Um, they bring back a bunch of talent and production on the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line is once again going to be a strength. Watch out for Danny Dennis Sutton this year. I expect little to no drop off, if not improvement, this year for that defense. And I think people's biggest question too with Penn State is James Franklin. He can never win the big one. He always loses a big one. Oh, blah blah blah. Eventually, he's going to win a big game. What Penn State does every year, they win every game that they're favored in, and any games that they're the underdog, they lose. That's just how it goes. They never outperform what they should be. They will be favored in 10 or 11 games this year. Penn State is going to go 10 and 2, 11 and 1, because they win every game they're favored in, they lose every game that they are underdogs in. But I have them winning the Big Ten championship game because even a broken clock is right twice a day. James Franklin is going to win a big game that he's the underdog in at some point. It can't continually happen this often. Broken clock is right twice a day. Penn State currently has the 4th best odds to win it all, and honestly, they might. They should. They have the talent to do it. Can James Franklin win the big one? I'm not going to say he's going to win the biggest one, but he's going to win a big game this year. There's just no way he doesn't. Finishing in 3rd, I have Oregon, which is probably not a shock because, again, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, any order of that top 3, and I'm not going to necessarily disagree. Offensively, brand new starting quarterback, brand new offensive line, lost 3 of your top 4 pass catchers, brought in a stud running back to replace your leading rusher from last year, and they didn't go into the portal to get a quarterback. I think that gives me, if I were an Oregon fan, hope that they really like what they have in Dante Moore and didn't feel the need to go even entertain that thought. If I had to pick my biggest concern, you could say it should be, since you have a brand new offensive line, it could be a question mark or a brand new starting quarterback. Sure, it's the pass catchers. Just because, again, they clearly have the confidence in Dante Moore. Offensive line, they went out and got a couple very experienced guys. Not too many, because that's what the best teams do. They don't go and overload the roster with transfers. I think it's going to be the pass catchers. I think that's going to be my biggest concern. And it feels like I'm probably nitpicking when I say that, because I do think Stewart and Sadiq are going to be perfect options for Dante Moore, but you got to have a third one or even a fourth one. Who behind those two are going to step up and, take that next step as a pass catcher? That would be my one my one question, I guess. Defensively, they bring back 2 of the top 3 pass rushers from last year. Um, they bring back Botcher at linebacker for another year. Secondary has been completely rebuilt through the portal, though. Now, again, that normally would make me nervous because I don't like when teams overhaul a roster or overhaul one, position group, you know, in the transfer portal, especially when they don't have a brand new coach. It's the same coach. That's kind of what Oregon does. Is they don't usually go heavy in the portal because they don't need to. It's what the best teams do. They have guys on the roster that take the place of the stars that leave, and then they fill in the few holes that they have on each side with studs. And I think that's exactly what they did on defense. They brought back enough talent at linebacker. They brought back enough talent on the defensive line. Let's just go get some studs in the secondary and ball out this year. And I think that's exactly what they do. Again, Oregon's a team that reloads. They have the talent on the roster. They only go into the portal to fill the one or two holes that they have on each side of the ball. It's what the best teams do. Oregon is one of the best teams. That's why they do it that way. I do think they're going to take a step back this year because, let's be honest, they went undefeated in the regular season. There's no way that they don't take a step back. It's so hard to go undefeated just once. To go back to back is so difficult. So we're going to see Oregon lose a game or two this year. But they're still going to be in the running for a Big Ten championship. They're still going to be making the playoffs. They still have a shot at winning the national title. Finishing fourth, I've got Illinois. And some people might not agree with this because, Illinois had a good season last year, but, they won a lot of close games. They were lucky, blah, 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 blah. I don't care because they were still a good team. They still had a good record, and they bring back so much production on both sides of the ball. I think and this is probably going to bite me in the ass, I think Illinois is going to be really good and could be that fourth team to make the college football playoff. Like I said, they bring back so much production on both sides of the ball, but on offense, most importantly, they bring back Luke Altmaier. They bring back all of their offensive line starters from last year. Wide receivers are going to be a question mark, though, because they have studs all over this offense, returning starters all over this offense, except at receiver. They lost Franklin, they lost Bryant. That's half of your receiving yards, or sorry, half of your receptions. That's just half of Luke Altmaier's completions last year, and over 60% of the receiving yards. That's a big hole to fill. Wide receivers will definitely be a question mark for Illinois' offense this year. Defense last year, they were just okay. I wouldn't say that they were great, good, whatever, but they also weren't bad. They were just okay. And they bring back a lot of production on that side of the ball. Is that necessarily a good thing because they were mediocre last year? You bring back all the same guys. Are they going to be above average this year? And that's it. We'll see. Whole secondary is back. Most of your linebackers are back. Defensive line, that's where you lost, most of that production. That does remain a question mark. I would like to think that the defense takes a step forward this year. But I can't confidently say that. The schedule does have the potential to be pretty easy. Has the potential. So if the Big Ten does get four teams in the playoffs, Illinois could very well be that fourth. If the defense does not take that step forward and the offense struggles with the loss of Franklin and Bryant at receiver, Illinois is not making the playoffs. One of those two has to take a step forward or prove something before I will even place a bet on them to make the playoffs. Finishing fifth, I've got Michigan. Offensively, that passing attack was brutal last year. Whether you want to blame the quarterback, the wide receivers, combination of both, which I think it was more so that than anything, passing attack was just terrible. You had Colson, Loveland, or bust. Again, everybody blamed. I feel like most people actually blamed the quarterback play last year for the struggles passing the ball. I think the receivers are almost just as much to blame because they weren't good either. You bring in five-star freshman Bryce Underwood. You bring in Mikey Keene. We've currently got a quarterback battle between those two. And I think whoever wins that battle is going to be a significant upgrade to what you had at quarterback last year. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if we do see Mikey Keene at least start the season and then Bryce Underwood eventually take over. I wouldn't be too shocked to see that. Now, per usual, this is going to be a run-first or offense. That's just how Michigan rolls. They do bring back most of their offensive line. They brought in Justice Haynes from Bama. It's just the wide receivers that are the concern. Because, again, that was the biggest concern last year was the passing attack. Had that passing attack been better, Michigan would have had a better season, in my opinion. And I think that remains the exact question this year. I think they're going to be upgraded at quarterback. How good are those wide receivers going to be? Defensively, should be solid yet again, honestly. They return a ton of starters and production from that side of the ball. Yes, they did lose some studs to the draft, but again, much like all the top teams in college football, they are a reload rather than a rebuild team. I think Michigan does bounce back this year just because, again, they're upgrading at quarterback. Even if their receivers are just as bad as last year, you're still upgraded at quarterback. But that is probably my biggest concern with Michigan this year. It's not the defense, it's not the rushing attack, it's not even quarterback, it is those wide receivers. I have Iowa finishing sixth, and honestly, them finishing sixth is completely reliant on the fact that I think Mark Gronowski is going to be a better quarterback than Iowa's had over the last however many years. Um, Put up huge numbers at South Dakota State. South Dakota State was an absolute powerhouse in the FCS. Now he is making that jump to the Power Four, and not just Power Four, but the Big Ten. That remains to be seen if he actually is a stud, but I do think he is going to be good. I'm sure everybody saw it, that viral one throw that he had rolling out and hitting a guy along the sideline, and Iowa fans just lost their mind. And I get it, because you've had terrible quarterback play. Um, Wide receiver room is a concern. Just not a lot of proven guys in that room. Granted, they've never really had a quarterback to throw to them, so that could be part of it. Offensive line should be solid. They bring back 3 starters from last year. Caleb Johnson is gone, but you do bring back your second and third leading rushers from last year. It's Iowa, so I'm sure the tight ends are going to be good, above average, good, great, whatever it is. They're never bad. Defense, again, it's Iowa. As long as Phil Parker is the defensive coordinator, that defense is going to be solid. They do bring back a ton of production along that defensive line. Um, they bring back most of their secondary. I guess you wanted to nitpick linebacker is a concern because they are returning very little production there. But again, a Phil Parker defense is always going to be good at worst. So I'm not too worried about that side of the ball. It all hinges around, did Iowa finally find a good quarterback? Again, I think they did. And I'm not going to go as far as to say that they have a potentially easy schedule, but outside of Iowa State, which is on the road, but you're still in Iowa, all of their toughest games are at home. If they finally have a quarterback and can win some of these tough games at home, they could be a dark horse to make the playoff. Do I think they will? No. I have them at sixth, but could be a dark horse. All right, time for a Minnesota Minute. I so badly want to say, is there a path for Minnesota to go 12-0? But I'm not going to be delusional. I'll be realistic here. But Minnesota does have a shot to go 8-4, 9-3 this year. I think if everything hits 9-3, obviously, it never all fully hits for every team every year. So that's probably going to happen where they're going 9-3, 8-4 at best, but still be a very good Big Ten team. Now, offensively, there are quite a few unknowns across this offense. I think tight end and running back should be fine. You got Darius Taylor coming back. I like the additions of Turner and Davis. I think I mentioned earlier that Penn State's probably gonna have the best running back duo in the country, if not or Big Ten, if not the country. The Gophers may make a run at that, and if they don't finish best in the conference, they'll be the second best running back duo. I would bet money on it. QB is going to be a question mark. Now, I'm high on him. I know Gopher fans are high on him. Drake Lindsey, though, is a redshirt freshman, and with any redshirt freshman, they're going to make mistakes. They're never going to be perfect because they're first-time starters, they're redshirt freshmen. He did have a great mentor in Max Brosmer. I think having Max Brosmer last year does so many great things for Drake Lindsey moving forward, not only just teaching him the right way to prepare and how to play, but Max Brosmer also got PJ Fleck to finally trust a quarterback, and now he's got another quarterback coming in who was mentored by that quarterback that got him to trust again. I think that's going to be great for Drake Lindsey moving forward. I think it's been great for the Gophers moving forward, offensively, just in general. Max Brosmer, we're going to look back and just see just how important he was to this program. But again, Drake Lindsey is a first-time starter. There's going to be a few ups and downs, hopefully more ups than downs. I am high on him. I think he is going to have a good year. If he hits his ceiling as a redshirt freshman, again, Gophers can go 9-3. I will say one great sign too is you had Zach Pyron transfer in. and he left immediately. He stuck around for spring and then gone. Went to like South Alabama or something like that. Uh, that goes to show me he was not winning the starting job and was out of there. Wide receiver room is going to be another question mark on this team. Jackson and Spencer are gone. Le'Meke Brockington has to have a breakout year this year. He has to take another step forward. I do like the addition of Loya and Tracy. You've brought in a lot of guys over the last couple of years in the wide receiver room, and you should be able to find some guys in there. You've brought in enough that there's got to be one or two good ones in there. Le'Meke Brockington can take a step forward, take that step forward. That I think he finished it. Was he? Is it Phil Steele's top 50 most freak athletes or whatever, or whoever it is? I think Le'Meke Brockington was on that list. If he can just put it together and have a great season, that will do wonders for this Gopher offense. Last question on the offense would be the offensive line. You only bring back two starters. You lose a lot of, not just starters, but starters that had been there for a minute on that offensive line. And you've got potentially two transfers and a redshirt freshman filling those holes. Offensive line makes me a little nervous. Again, a redshirt freshman, they're going to make mistakes. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be ups and downs, hopefully more ups than downs. This offensive line makes me a little nervous. Defensively for the Gophers, I I honestly think it might be the strength of this team. I am not too worried about the defense this year because I think this defensive line is going to be sick. I think Anthony Smith is about to go off, and I think it's going to be the strength of this defense is going to be this defensive line. Linebacker should be good enough. Safeties are going to be elite. The cornerbacks do make me nervous. I will admit that. Cornerbacks make me nervous, but if your defensive line is going to be elite, that means they don't have to cover as long. Your safeties are elite. I think this defense is going to be very good this year. Overall, for this Gopher team, again, maybe I'm blinded by my fandom, but they could be favored in 9 out of their 12 games this year. Could be favored. I'm not saying they're going to be, but they have the chance to be favored in 9 of their games. Again, a ton of question marks on that offense. I think the defense will be great. But 9-3, 8-4, it is on the table. It is on the table for this team. I do think they finish top half of the Big Ten. They are going to go bowling. That streak is going to continue with PJ Fleck winning a bowl game, but they have the potential to go 9-3 this year. Finishing eighth, and this may be controversial, but I got Indiana. I do have them finishing eighth this year. Now, granted, 8-4, 9-3 for this team is also very much on the table. Offensively, they should still be very good this year. Fernando Mendoza is a good pickup at quarterback. They bring back a good amount of their rushing and receiving production from last year. 3 returning starters on that offensive line. Indiana's offense is going to be good. Defensively for Indiana, they lose a lot of production and a lot of their starters. They only bring back 4 starters, but the 4 starters that they did bring back are absolute studs. Now, that being said, I do think the defense is going to take a step back this year, but there's no way that they shouldn't still be top half of the Big Ten at worst. I don't think they're going to take that far of a step back. I think they're still going to be a very good defense. It's just when you lose that many starters, it can be hard to sometimes replace that. Overall, though, Indiana's still going to have a very good year. They still have the shot to go 9-3, 8-4. They're still a good team, even though they're going to take a step back from last year. They're still a very good team. But here's the thing: is their schedule last year was so easy. We all know it. One of the easiest schedules in the Power Four, if not the easiest. This year it is going to be more difficult. There's no way that it's not. They play at home against Illinois. They play on the road at Iowa. That's never easy. They play on the road at Oregon. That's never easy. And they play on the road at Penn State. That's never easy. Their schedule, without a doubt, is much harder this year, and they are going to take a step back, but they're still going to be, or should be, an 8-4, 9-3 team. Finishing ninth, I've got Washington. Honestly, I didn't think that they were that terrible their first year in the Big Ten. Obviously, there was some glaring issues on both sides of the ball that need to be addressed this year. And do I think it's going to be this second year in the Big Ten? They're all of a sudden going to be competing for a Big Ten championship? No, but I do think they're headed in the right direction. Offensively, one of the worst offensive lines in the country last year, so that does have to improve. Um, it sounds like they're very, very high on Damon Williams, and they expect him to be a star. But it's hard to expect a quarterback to be a star, or especially when they're a new starter, when they don't have a good offensive line. The offensive line, it was, like I said, was very bad last year. It is very young this year, and if he doesn't have a good offensive line, we may see a 1 year delay in that stardom. Wide receivers are a little bit of a question mark. I'm not too worried about it. That offensive line, that's the main thing. That has to be better this year. Defensively, their run defense was terrible last year. They brought in a good amount of transfers on the defensive side of the ball. Linebacker room is completely rebuilt. Defensive line has a bunch of new guys. Even the secondary, which was the strength last year, has a few new faces in that secondary. I mean, they kind of overhauled this defense through the transfer portal this year, it feels like. Um, I do expect them to take a step forward. You'll see here, too, if you look at Washington's roster, defensively and even offensively, a lot of transfers from Arizona, where we did see Jed Fish have a lot of success at Arizona towards the end, and that's why he got the job at Washington. He does bring in a lot of guys that he was coaching at Arizona over these last two cycles in the portal. I think that's good for him. It's guys you've coached, guys you know what they're capable of. So I do, again, I don't love when teams overhaul rosters or offense or defense when they don't have a brand new coach. But when he's bringing in a lot of guys that he's already coached, it's a little different. I think Washington is taking the steps in the right direction. I don't think they're going to be great this year, but I do think that they are better this year. My biggest concern, though, is that offensive line. For the team as a whole, it's that offensive line. They were so terrible last year, and they're so young this year. That's my biggest question. Nebraska, I have them finishing 10th. And honestly, because I don't think Nebraska is going to be bad this year, they have the potential to be really good this year. I don't think that they are Big Ten title, playoff contender, national championship contender. They're not there yet. But they have the potential to be very good this year. Offensively, bringing in Dana Holgorsen to be the offensive coordinator now, giving him a full offseason of Dylan Raiola, even last year was helping Dylan Raiola. There's no way that this offense doesn't flourish this year under Holgorsen, and we don't see a next step with Raiola. Uh, and they did bring in some decent weapons for him to get the ball to. Offensive line should be good enough. I think I think everything's going to start clicking for Raiola. Like I said, another offseason or a full offseason with Dana Holgorsen is going to do wonders. Dana Holgorsen calling the plays is going to do wonders. I think Nebraska's offense is going to be very good this year. Defense is where I probably would question them. Pass defense was a weakness from the team last year. They bring back their whole secondary pretty much, and I don't know if that's a great thing. Yes, you could argue they're going to be another year experience and they'll be better this year. At the same time, it was a terrible secondary and you're bringing back all the same pieces. Is that necessarily a good thing? And I think their defense is what's really holding them back from being a Big Ten title contender, playoff contender. They're still a few steps away, I think, from being a national title contender. But I think they're going to be a solid team this year. 8-4 is a possibility. I guess 9-3 could be a possibility. 7-5 though is probably more likely. I think the offense will be better. I think defense is where my biggest questions are for Nebraska and what's holding them back this year. Finishing 11th, I've got Rutgers. I mean, they bring back pretty much their whole offense from last year, except for Kyle Monungai and a handful of receivers. But they've got their full offensive line back. They've got their quarterback. They've got their tight end. Two of their top three receivers. Should be good, right? Should be great. Your returning quarterback is Ethan Kaliakmanis, and I've seen enough of him to know that he's not going to be a bad quarterback, but he's not going to be a good quarterback. He's just going to be kind of mediocre, occasionally have an above average game. Bringing him back is doesn't do much for me. But that being said, bringing back everybody else on that offense should be a good thing. They should just still be a solid offensive team. And honestly, surprisingly, they might be the strength of this team this year. Defensively for Rutgers, they were not great last year. And they only returned 2 starters from that side of the ball this year, which is probably a good thing, let's be honest, if you were that bad. They do bring in a handful of transfers along the defensive line and secondary. I mean, I don't love when teams have to overhaul 2 position groups on one side of the ball on a team that didn't lose the head coach. But again, probably needed to be done. Um, Again, I expect the offense to actually be the strength of this team, though, this season. Even if the defense is improved from last year, I still expect the offense to be the strength. That being said, I don't expect much more than 7-5 or 6-6 for Rutgers this year because they do have, in my opinion, a pretty difficult schedule. Michigan State, I have them finishing 12th. We're looking at year 2 of Aiden Childs being the quarterback, and if you want to look for some optimism with him because he didn't have the greatest year last year, you definitely saw improvement as the season went on. The start of the year was rough, turning the ball over way too much. He got better as the year went on, and that has to give you confidence going into this season. Um, and also, they bring back 2 of their top 3 pass catchers from last year, which is always great to have that consistency as a quarterback who is still trying to improve and get better and is still young. Running back will be a question. Offensive line is a question because they basically rebuilt that offensive line through the portal, and that is not always a great sign. If your offensive line is not great, running back's not going to be great. Aiden Childs, we may not see as much of a jump forward as we'd like to, but offensive line can be solid. We will see improvement from Aiden Childs this year. Defensively, they return a good amount of production on that side of the ball, but they do lose their top two tacklers and their top 2 pass rushers. Brought in a lot of transfers on the defensive line and the secondary. And this defense, I mean, they really weren't great last year. And if I'm being honest, I don't see them improving all that much this year defensively. And I think that's where we're going to see Michigan State is really just like a 6-6, maybe 7-5 team this year. I do think they're good enough to make a bowl game. I think that defense is going to hold them back, and that offensive line could also be a potential issue. But I do think we see the offense take a step forward because I do think Aiden Childs got better last year, and I do think he will be better this year. Back half of the schedule looks to be difficult, so if they have a rough start to the year, Michigan State's probably not making a bowl game because that back half of the schedule is the toughest part of that schedule. So we will know early on if we're going to see improvement from Michigan State or not. Finishing 13th, I have UCLA. I really don't expect much from them this year. I'm going to be honest with you. They were very one-sided offensively last year. Decent passing attack, terrible at running the ball. And so if they want to continue with having a decent passing attack, you want to get a good quarterback to replace, the quarterback that you lost, Garbers. So you bring in Nico Iamaliava, the guy who cannot hit a deep ball for the life of him. Brought in a new offensive coordinator. Maybe that will help with the run game. I don't know. I don't expect much from this offense this year. Running back is a transfer, quarterback is a transfer. They've got a handful of transfer wide receivers. 3 of the 5 offensive line starters this year are going to be transfers. The offense is made up of transfers, and it makes me nervous. And again, if you watch Nico Iamaliava last year at Tennessee, yes, he was a redshirt freshman, so yes, there were going to be up and downs, but my goodness, the deep ball was brutal. I don't have high hopes for the offense this year. Defensively, they had a good run defense, and they do bring back most of their defensive line. They did completely rebuild their secondary. I do think defensively, they can't be worse than last year. I think they'll be the same, if not a slight step forward. I just, I just don't love UCLA in the Big Ten this year, next year, ever. Um, they did not have a great first year in the Big Ten. Their schedule was pretty difficult, both conference and non-conference. That schedule should be a lot easier this year. It should be, you know, They should be able to manage it a lot better. But that being said, for so many transfers on a team that doesn't have a brand new coach, yes, it is only a second year, but he's not a brand new coach. I expect a much similar season to what we had last year. I have USC finishing 14th, and that's probably going to be controversial to a lot of people. I just am not high on Lincoln Riley because it's the same thing year in and year out with his teams, and it's probably going to be the same this year until I'm proven otherwise. Offense is great, defense sucks, and they have a above average to a good season. And that's what it's been last year. That's what it was the year before. That's what it was the year before that. It's what it was going back to Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley has great offenses and not good defenses. So that's what I fully expect to happen this year. Mayava is probably going to be above average to a good quarterback. They have decent wide receivers. They are going to be throwing the ball all over the place. Um, and they're going to have a great offense. That's just how it works with USC or Lincoln Riley teams. And then defensively, shocking, they struggled last year, struggled the year before that. They always struggle on defense, and they're probably going to struggle again this year. Honestly, at this point, I have to see it before I'm going to believe that any of his defenses could be good or decent or above average or great. I just, it never happens. Now, granted, things can change. You know, if they brought in studs through the portal and have been good at recruiting, sure. I don't have faith. I don't. Until I see it, I don't have faith. I don't believe USC is going to be successful in the Big Ten as long as Lincoln Riley is the head coach. Unfortunately, he does have that huge buyout, like I mentioned, of like 88 million. Their schedule is looking to be somewhat difficult this year. I think 6-6, 7-5 is honestly the ceiling for them. But if they don't make a bowl game, I also wouldn't be shocked. Wisconsin, I have them finishing 15th. I wish Wisconsin was good because it would be nice if it was going to be if it would be a competitive game, for the Axe at the end of the year. But it is what it is. Offensively, Phil Longo is out, which probably for the best. Let's be honest. They bring in Jeff Grimes, which again probably the right call, and I think will be a better fit at Wisconsin. They brought in Billy Edwards at quarterback, which I don't hate. I don't really, I don't dislike that pickup for them. They do bring back a good amount of their offensive line, which is not a bad call there. Not a negative for them. But Wisconsin has never really had wide receivers that scare you, and they didn't really bring in much in the portal. And running back too for Wisconsin typically is good. Typically they have very good running backs, so maybe running back will be fine. But running back and wide receivers are a question mark for me on this team because they lost Tawi Walker. They bring back Dupree, Yakimelli, and Jones, who haven't really done much in their careers. I don't love the weapons on this offense. I like Billy Edwards. I like the offensive line. That's about it. I do not like the weapons that they have on this offense, and I don't think that any of them actually scare you. Defensively for Wisconsin, not great last year, especially at stopping the run. Secondary was solid, and they do bring back most of their secondary from last year, so that's a good sign for the defense. And that will be the strength yet again because you need to be better on that defensive line. Finished 120th in the country in sacks last year. Brought in quite a few transfers from the defensive line this year, or for the defensive line. It can only go up. So I do expect this defense to be improved from last year, just because they do bring back all of their secondary, who was very good last year. The defensive line can't be worse than last year. So I do think the defense is improved this year, but it's offensively that I struggle with. I struggle with being high on Wisconsin this year. I think if they continue to not have a good offense, I think Luke Fickell could be out this year, as I mentioned earlier. Maryland finishing 16th, and honestly, that might be too high because I just have no hope for Maryland this year. Offensively, they lost their quarterback, they lost their leading rusher, they lost 5 of their top 6 receiving pass catchers. And offense is typically the strength of a Maryland team under Mike Locksley, but it's hard to get a read on this offense this year. I guess they're probably going to be solid, um, but they lost so much production from their team from last year that I don't know what this offense is going to look like. And defensively, same kind of thing. they bring back even less starters on that side of the ball. I think they bring back like one, maybe two, which again may not be the worst thing because that defense was terrible last year. And of the 8 defensive transfers they brought in, 5 were along the defensive line, which was terrible last year, similar to Wisconsin. Finished 126th in sacks last year. Much like Wisconsin, that defensive line can't be worse this year. They've got to take some sort of step forward. There's no way that they can take a step back because there's not many more steps back to even take. So I do think they'll be improved on the defensive line. But again, hard to get a read on Maryland this year. I just do not have high hopes for them. I think they've never been great under Mike Locksley. I honestly think he's gone this year. I don't think Maryland does a whole lot. Finishing 17th, Northwestern. I just don't have high hopes for Northwestern this year. If the Big Ten works out the way that I do have it, they would end up playing 4 of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten, which is not great for them. Uh, Shocker, I know this is not going to surprise anybody, but offense was the weak spot on this team last year. Uh, I, and I don't know how much it's actually going to improve. They bring in Preston Stone, cool. Bringing in a talented quarterback is great and all, if you have weapons for him to throw to. And they don't have the weapons for him to throw to. Wide receiver room is bleak. I think it's going to be a long year for that Northwestern offense. And last year defense actually wasn't that great either, but again, if your offense is not giving you much, it's hard to be a great defense. They return most of the defensive line. They should take a step forward, I guess. I just have zero faith in this offense, and I think the defense eventually, even if they are good, they're going to get worn out because the offense is not helping them. It's going to be a long year for Northwestern. And then finishing last, I don't think this is going to be a shock to anybody, is Purdue. I have them finishing dead last. Again, not a shock. Absolutely brand new roster. 54 new transfers coming in. They lost 56 to the transfer portal. Devin Mockabee is the one and only returning starter on this team, offense and defense combined. I like the Barry Odom hire. I do think that it is going to be a better hire than what they had previously under Walters, but this is going to be a rough year. It's going to be a rough transition year. I will make a bold take and say that they will win more games than last year. I know that's bold of me to say, but they will win more than they did last year. But in the end, I have no hopes for them this year. It is a transition year. It's going to be a long rebuild for Barry Odom, but I do like the hire and think it's good for them moving forward. So yeah, that's where I have all the Big Ten teams finishing. Some controversial picks, I guess, but top 3 being Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. I think everybody has that. Bottom teams being teams like Maryland and Northwestern and Purdue. I think those are also generally what everybody has. It's everything in between those that is getting all mumbled and jumbled. And I may have had some picks that were controversial and may bite me in the ass later, but it is what it is. End of season awards. The Big Ten gives out so many end of season awards compared to every other conference. But I went ahead and made a pick for most of them. Defensive Player of the Year, I think, is going to be Danny Dennis Sutton for Penn State. I think he is poised for a phenomenal year. Jim Knowles is the coordinator. I think it's going to be great. Offensive Player of the Year, I have Drew Aller, honestly. Having Defensive and Offensive Player of the Year being on the same team, crazy, I know, but I think Penn State's going to have a phenomenal year this year. Freshman of the Year, Player of the Year, I did Julian Sayin. You can make the argument for some other quarterbacks around the conference, but I'm going to go with Julian Sayin because if he, as a redshirt freshman, does well on the team that I have finishing first in the conference and making the playoffs, it's probably going to be him. Coach of the Year, James Franklin. I have Penn State winning the Big Ten championship game, making the playoffs, obviously. James Franklin, Coach of the Year. QB of the Year is going to be Drew Aller. Again, if he's Offensive Player of the Year, he's going to be, his position Player of the Year. Running Back of the Year, Darius Taylor. I think the Penn State duo will be taking too much from each other for either one to edge the other out, and I think Darius Taylor will edge out Turner, as the best running back on Minnesota, where he pulls away for the win. Wide receiver of the year, this one is kind of a cop out. I probably could have picked in more of an underdog, but Jeremiah Smith, let's be honest, he's probably going to win wide receiver of the year. Tight end of the year, I'm giving that to Kenyon Sadiq at Oregon. I think he's going to be vital for Dante Moore's progression as a quarterback, and I think we see him have a big year. Defensive lineman of the year, Danny Dennis Sutton. Again, if he wins defensive player of the year, he's going to win his position group player of the year. Linebacker of the year, I'm going to have is Gabe Jackas from Illinois. And defensive back of the year, this one is probably my most controversial pick, but because it's probably going to be Caleb Downs from Ohio State. But we're going Coy Parrish. Just why not? Defensive back of the year. Anyways, that is my Big Ten preview. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. One more episode before we start previewing games and recapping games. We're so close. We're within the 2 weeks. So next week, like I mentioned, season preview as a whole, playoff prediction, Heisman, all of that good stuff. So thank you all for joining me. I'll be back next week.